Slava Ukraini! How many Ukrainian children are peering out of a window in Ukraine, across Europe, right here in Canada? They are peering out of a window and wondering, when will the war end? Where are we going next? What lies ahead? When will we see Tato? When can we go home? Do we have the slide advancer here? I need the slide advancer up here, please. It is not here. Oh, there it is. Мене звати Orest Sklierenko. І сьогодні ми з вами розкажемо про роботу Канадсько-Української фундації. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to tell you about the work of the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, CUF, or CUF for short. Helping with the type of humanitarian catastrophe Ukraine is facing today aligns with CUF's founding mission to coordinate, develop, organize, and deliver assistance projects generated by Canadians and directed to Ukraine. CUF accomplishes its mission by raising funds which are then allocated to sustainable and cost-effective projects which respond to the needs of Ukraine and its people. These children are at a rally outside Toronto's City Hall in early spring. The classrooms at their full-day Ukrainian schools have swelled by more than 50% as a result of displaced Ukrainian children arriving here in Canada. My son's Ukrainian community soccer team, 14 boys finished the winter season, and since April, 8 new boys have been added, with similar increases at every age group. They come from Ternopil, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Lviv, but they also come from Kyiv, Cherkasy, Kryvyi Rih, Vinnytsia, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Every corner of our community is supporting the arriving families as best they can. So many of our community organizations, so many of you in this room, all of you in this room, have played a part, and you continue to do so. The community that is receiving these families with open arms is the same community that founded the Canada-Ukraine Foundation almost 30 years ago. The largest humanitarian crisis in Europe since World War II, thousands dead, 10,000 injured, and many millions displaced. This is precisely the type of moment when we should be grateful to those who came before us, creating this important foundation so we can help Ukraine at its time of need. Emerging from a resolution at the UCC Triennial Congress of 1995, right here in Winnipeg, the Canada-Ukraine Foundation has been helping coordinate, develop, organize, and deliver humanitarian aid for almost 30 years. To tell you a little bit more about that work, it's my pleasure to introduce the past president and the chair of the Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Fund at the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. He will be receiving a hard-earned and well-deserved award at tomorrow evening's banquet. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Victor Hetmanczuk.
I have the privilege of giving you a short history lesson of CUF. It's going to be very brief because really our work really took off beginning in February of 2022, and we'll spend some more time on that. But it's important to show that we went through a number of phases as we grew the organization. The first couple of years were basically the formative years, and it was a small steering group of people dedicated in Western Canada who started CUF. And we should recognize the first two presidents, Dr. Yaroslav Barvinsky from Winnipeg and lawyer Andriy Hetmanczuk, who were supported by volunteer directors. In the middle there, we started to grow and actually started to collect some funds. Our biggest year was like $300,000. So we were finally starting to get a little more juice coming in. Towards the end, in 2008 to 2014, we started to take off and gather more funds. We were able to solicit grants from the federal government and other institutions so we could make bigger and I think it's important you should see on the slide some of our partners during those times. These are the corporate founders of CUF. They're still with us, and they're entitled to one member on the board, and we appreciate their participation. This is not what I did when I was in school, but this is a mind map. And I really struggled, like, what are they trying to tell me here? Well, basically, over the years, we looked at all our documents, and what did we talk about? Well, you can see here we got 3 distinct clusters, which relate to relieving poverty, advancement of education, and engaging in humanitarian relief. And we will show you what we did to get to these points. I believe it's important to give you a little bit of my background. What skill sets do I bring to being the president of CUF? Well, I spent 40 years in the Ukrainian community, working at the local level, the national level, and the international level. So I'm totally familiar with the Ukrainian diaspora. So when the Maidan hit, I was able to bring not only my community work, but in my professional life, I'm a chemical engineer, so I solved problems. And also, I did logistics. I was responsible for shipping lubricants from Petro-Canada, from Mississauga, Ontario, to Amsterdam and to Japan. So I come to the job saying, if there's a problem, I can fix it, okay? In the Maidan, oops, went too fast, okay. We started hearing rumors and actually seeing the people being shot and wounded. We were the first ones to actually set up hostels. We rented apartments just off the Hetmanczuk there, and we put them up day and night, 7 days a week. We cooked for them. We gave them some place where they could recharge their batteries. What am I going to say next? Sorry, next slide. As a result of the injuries and deaths on the Maidan, we sent a team of doctors to tour Ukraine to identify the needs. It is important to understand that what drives CUF is not what we think Ukraine needs. We actually go to Ukraine and talk to the people, talk to the ministries, and our programming is driven by the needs from Ukraine. And one of our legacy missions was the Canadian medical missions. We have gone 8 times. We've seen, interviewed 548 patients, and we did 230 patients had operations. Some of these operations were more than 1 or 2. And we went to Kiev, Odessa, and Lviv. In Canada, because we are the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, we started the Holodomor tour in 2015. Some of you may have seen the bus parked this week here in Winnipeg, but we have gone to 500 schools, universities, museums, and community centers. We've gone to festivals from Victoria, BC, to Sydney, Nova Scotia, and as far north as Slave Lake in Alberta. And we have exposed the people to 68,000 people and students have seen our work and what Holodomor is all about. You see there's an interactive bus. Jidalo is also a designated program of ours, and that's where we support a comprehensive program of education and rehabilitation services for Jidalo in Lviv. And this is to help children and youth with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and other developmental disabilities. As they become older, they have no place to go because by law they have to leave. We have instituted 6 satellite branches where there are day programs so they can still keep on being rehabilitated. For COVID-19, we were one of the organizations that picked a partner in Ukraine. They're known as Initiative Yeah. We've worked with Initiative Yes since 2014 because they helped us identify who the wounded were. So when it came to getting oxygen concentrators out, we purchased about 120 of them, and we were giving them out free to anybody that needed oxygen at home after they led the hospital. Okay, Orest, you're next.
Eight years ago, we watched the Revolution of Dignity take place, which escalated the invasion of Crimea and Donbass. Several of the aforementioned projects were developed and launched to help address the consequences of this invasion, including a humanitarian demining pilot project launched mid-last year. Fast forward to the end of 2021, we saw a rapid buildup of Russian forces at Ukraine's borders, and a threat of full-scale invasion became real more than ever. To prepare for what we feared might happen, on January 28, 2022, the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress and the Canada-Ukraine Foundation established the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal and the Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Committee to formalize a coordinated approach in providing humanitarian assistance quickly and efficiently to Ukraine if and when it was needed. As a result, on February 24th, when Russia launched massive airstrikes all across Ukraine, we were ready to deploy the humanitarian aid within a few days. Having learned that most of Ukraine's buckwheat seed stores had been stolen or destroyed in the first few months of the attacks, the Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Committee sourced seed from a farmer right here in Manitoba. 140 metric tons of buckwheat seed were sent from Canada to Ukraine this summer, and the harvest was completed earlier this month. What makes the story even more interesting and sends goosebumps up and down my spine is understanding how that buckwheat seed would have arrived here in Manitoba to begin with. It came in 1904. It was brought here by Ukrainians settling the prairies over 100 years ago. Because of the 130-year-plus history of Ukrainians in Canada and the relationships we have formed and cultivated in towns and cities across this great land, it's because of those relationships that we received a rapid and very generous response to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal. I'm going to share one personal example of a trip I made to Surrey, British Columbia on March 7th. The Punjabi community reached out through the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress and said, we want to hold a radiothon, telethon for your humanitarian appeal. We want to help the people of Ukraine. And so many of our community leaders participated by Zoom and by telephone, and it fell to me to fly out and join the team in British Columbia at this radiothon. I participated in the studio, and while I was there, the donations came flooding in, and at the end of the day, I said, how do we do all this? How do we reconcile all of the finances and the paperwork? And they said, come back tomorrow and we'll have everything ready for you. So I came back and they said, we've raised $300,000 in one day. And they handed over all the paperwork, all the donor lists, there were some checks and so on and so forth, and then they handed me a large envelope that weighed about 20 pounds. And I said, what's this? And they said, the local school emptied their piggy banks, and it was about $500 worth of coins from the kids in a local school. And at that moment, I broke down, my emotions got the better of me. It was just a week and a half into the invasion, and this generosity has been echoed by countless communities, organizations, businesses, and families from coast to coast. Tens of thousands of donors have supported this appeal. And all that support came amid unprovoked, indiscriminate, and genocidal attacks on Ukraine and its people. These attacks have caused insurmountable heartbreak, grief, sorrow, and anger. 7 million refugees in European countries, almost 7 million internally displaced, 6,000 civilians killed, almost 400 of them children, 9,000 to 10,000 injured, 14.5 million people are estimated to need health assistance, 11.2 million people are in need of shelter assistance and support. 1.7 need access to ahead of the winter. They need to get ready ahead of the winter. Nearly 2,400 educational facilities have been damaged. 15% of them completely destroyed, almost 300 completely destroyed. And 746 medical facilities have been damaged, 123 of them completely destroyed. It's in the wake of these negative feelings that the funds gathered by the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal are deployed to deliver aid where and when it is needed. The Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Committee works in consultation with the existing CUF programming committees, healthcare, education, and civil society, and other subject matter experts to ensure the applications received are assessed by subject matter experts and decisions are made quickly. One of the silver linings of the cloud of this year, which I'm sure many of you have experienced in your local community organizations, is the re-engagement of many people within our community organizations. We've had an outpouring support from the Ukrainian Canadian medical community across Canada, and as a result, we have a multi-province, multi-specialty team of external medical experts that remains at the committee's disposal. We have already transformed 22 million of the 45 million that has been received. The ability of the Ukraine Humanitarian Relief Committee to leverage the funds in an efficient and flexible manner is why this has become the fund of choice across Canada for those seeking to support humanitarian relief efforts in Ukraine. I'm going to welcome back Victor to tell you a little bit more about some of these initiatives.
You're probably curious how many projects have we reviewed. Officially, we've only received 250 to September 1 because a lot of people don't read. It says on our website, if you wish to apply, you have to fill out the application. They do not fill out the application. They write me a big, long email, and it's like an application, and I keep saying, I'm sorry. The first rule of accepting your grant application is you got to follow the rules. And we're very strict with the criteria that we use for accepting the projects. Tomorrow in the workshop, I will go into great detail as to the criteria. We have 10 questions we ask at the beginning, whether they're going to be accepted or not. If they don't get 7 out of the 10 questions, they don't get to the next round. Okay? And the next round is really good because if, for example, one of the questions in the top 10 is, have you existed longer than 2 years? Because we're insisting as a charity in Canada, if we are to direct and control the project, we have to know that you have the capability of managing projects. So show us how big a project have you run? How long has it run for? How much money did you spend? Don't ask for $700,000 if all you've done is 70. Okay, so we go through a very rigorous, we check their bylaws. It's a very, tomorrow I'll go through it. I don't want to take the plenary session at all to explain. But of the 250 projects, what happened? You're going too fast. We've got 66 that have been approved and are in progress. We have another 25 that are pending. In other words, the project is interesting, but we don't have enough evaluation. So we send it to the committee, and when the committee comes back with a recommendation, only then does the Humanitarian Relief Committee meet. There are 4 of us, myself, Oksana Kozyshin, Olesya Lutsky-Andriovich, and Anna Koprieva. And I think it's a credit to all those Monday morning quarterbacks are saying, you're not spending fast enough. I says, why? What's this? Is this a race to spend? I says, if you look at the number of days the war's been on, we're probably tracking about $100,000 a day. Okay, so like the war's not going to be over in 3 days. We're prudent managers of the donations that people are giving us, and we're not just going to willy-willy to say, hey, look at me, I've spent all the money. Then what happens tomorrow? Okay, so we'll give you more details. Look at the CUF website and also subscribe to our e-blast, where we actually every week come up with a story of what we're doing, okay? Now, here are our partners. We don't have any employees. We have no structure at all in Ukraine, and that is deliberate because of such instability. And what we do is we leverage our associations with other people who are already in Ukraine. We bring the cash, we buy the products, we have them manufactured in Ukraine, and they are willing to work with us. On the food boxes, the food boxes are actually delivered for free by Plast. Okay, we deliver them, and then they go all over Ukraine. Global Medic does the same thing. So what I search for is people that I've known since 2014, that I've done previous projects with, and I trust them. And because a lot of these organizations are Canadian-based, like HelpAge Canada, Global Medic, Hope Worldwide Canada, SOS Children's Villages, that means I don't have to do a lot of paperwork. They do it all. Okay, so from my logistics background, I certainly understand what a third party can do, and I leverage it. We have no warehouses space here in Canada. If we get a donation, it goes right from the manufacturer's warehouse on an airplane or on a sea container and goes right overseas. We're not spending any money on assets that we're not going to be using. We've also negotiated 2 global contracts with Airlink and Flexport. All the large airlines have created a humanitarian organization. And if I need to move 14 pallets to Poland, I put it in and it'll probably go for free. My next job is to get the people who are flying to Poland for free. So trust me, we will squeeze the lemon as much as we can. We're not going to spend an extra nickel if we don't have to. So I really thank the partners in Ukraine and Canada doing this. Somebody's controlling me. Pani Lesia, yeah, my wife is here, so she's in control. It's hard to draw a map of Ukraine and then say this is where we've delivered to. Every organization that delivers for us, for example, gives me reports every month where they went to. Plast is rather unique. They put their label on our box as well, and on that label there's a QR code. And so when the donor gets the box of food, they take the QR, and we know exactly where the box went to and how many people are being fed. Okay? With AICM, which is the medical team out of Poltava, we've just purchased $700,000 worth of medicines. Every box that comes in off that truck has a code for cuff. When it's delivered to one of the 78 hospitals, I will get a report exactly where that stuff goes to. And why are we doing that? Is because, unfortunately, during a war, there are many unscrupulous, I'll forget it. And there's crooks out there. And what the crooks are doing is they're stealing the medicines and they're forcing the patients to pay for it. So now what we're doing on any medicine that's worth more than $20 US, we have a big red sticker. It says, this is a donation and no one can charge for it. Can you imagine, in the middle of a war, we have to be careful of who we deliver to because they're unscrupulous people who are just stealing it, okay? How many people have we... Okay. We have, out of the $22 million, $7 million have gone to the end of September to buying food boxes. That's 161,500 boxes, and that has touched 404,000 people. I think that's a pretty good job. And our partner, AICM, they have reached out to 660,000. So through our connections, we've been able to impact 1 million people with food supplies over the last couple of months. And for that, our 4-person team has received the honor of being on Putin's sanction list. As we said, because the war broke out, we could not move our medical teams back into Ukraine. It's too dangerous. So we've been patiently negotiating with the Polish government for about 9 months to actually bring a team into Poland. The Polish government and the Ukrainian government have a reciprocity where wounded people from Ukraine can be moved to Poland and they can be treated there. What we're bringing in is the expertise from North America. And to our surprise, the doctors from Canada were not certified in Poland. So we had to go to the Polish parliament and get them to change their law that we're just as good as the US and the Israeli doctors. Okay, so it was a real challenge to get to operate this last mission. But we succeeded. Okay, we went in September. We had 34 doctors and nurses. It was an 8-day pilot program because we've never worked in Poland before. And we took in with us $1.5 million worth of donated surgical equipment. Okay, if you see some of the pictures of a surgical case, each one of those cases with screws is $82,000. So we've had some very generous donations from the industry, and that's what keeps us going. We also shipped 16 pallets of supplies. We have, with Sunnybrook, a deal where we buy at the price that hospitals buy. So we get the advantage of their buying power. Because I can't, as CUF, buy certain things. So they buy it for us, and we then take it over there. We had, in our first mission, 16 patients, which we had 40 different operations. So the severity of the injuries this time around from when we had before, it's something that we've never seen. So there's a lot of work to be done. Our next mission is going to be sometime November, December. And then afterwards, in 2023, we've signed a 3-year extension with Sunnybrook to keep this thing going. So we know it's going to be a long time before we can get everybody looked after. So this is one of our legacy projects that we will continue on. When peace comes to Ukraine and we win the war, we'll come back into Ukraine. And you should also know that we paid for 2 emergency airlift flights to Sick Kids Hospital at the beginning in April, where we took in 8 children which had brain cancer, and they're being treated. These are Dr. Antonishin and their Stryker. That's the company that donated most of the stuff. Come on. One of the things that is going to be around for a long time in Ukraine is the trauma, the war trauma, and the psychological impact of losing a loved one because they're at the front. What we're doing is we are actually doing a program with Hope Canada, Hope Worldwide Canada, where we're going to be working with 9,900 children over 2 years. And we'll be training people in Ukraine to handle children's war trauma. CUF, in 2014, right after the Maidan, we worked with Caritas Ukraine to start the war trauma program. So here we are, it's an echo. 8 years later, we already have the experience and the know-how, and we will be obviously continuing the program for the children. For the adults, we have Open Doors. Open Doors is a evidence-based training institution set up by psychologists in Ukraine. They're associated with the university in the United States, and we are training their psychologists through a 2-year program so as they can be better psychologists. We're bringing in wounded veterans. So we're starting small, but eventually we hope to change the whole capability and capacity of the psychologists in Ukraine for the better, for the people. What may be, what are you looking at? That's a robot. It's a demining robot. What's happening here is that we have 160,000 square kilometers of Ukraine need to be demined. Okay, that is thousands and thousands of unexploded pieces of ordnance. The theory is for every year of a war, you have 10 years of demining. So we're in it for a long time. So we're doing our short term, but we're also preparing for the long term. In the Kharkiv Oblast, for example, when the Russians moved out, there was 12,500 square kilometers. These little robots that you see here, we purchased the same model that Ukraine used for the Euro Cup. So they've already got 10 of them. We're now giving them another 3, and we're hoping that they will start working with the emergency department in Ukraine. We have another partner called Free Ukraine out of Switzerland who have a special demining application. In other words, on your phone, you can go and you can identify where a mine is, and it will get recorded in a database. And right now, they've defined 945 separate areas that need to be cleaned up. We're going to be exploring how we can help them develop that further. We did try a human demining exercise before the war started, but because the ground froze up on it, and I think we're going to be, for safety's sakes, we're going to be dealing with the robots for a while. And you've seen all the bombing, you've seen all the fires, and we felt it was important that we support the firefighters in Ukraine, and we bought them 1,000 new sets. That's about $1.7 million. It's being delivered as we speak, and the robots are, I can't tell you where they are, but they're on their way to Ukraine. Okay, and not only are we buying new equipment, we are working with the firefighters in Kingston, Toronto, so they got some used stuff. We'll pick it up and we'll ship it to Ukraine. And the interesting thing is we may reach out to the U.S. Fire Association and get more stuff from there. So we know it's going to be a problem for a while. Once again, not forgetting Canada, we decided to do settlement camps for the children that came from Ukraine. And we did about, that's hard to count, 1,600, 1,800, whatever, but we did 33 or 34 camps here in Canada, from Quebec all the way to BC, and I think that was a real good morale booster. We had 5 camps in Quebec, 5 in Ontario, 5 in Manitoba, 5 in Alberta had 10. It was great. The kids enjoyed it and the parents loved it. We opened a CUA ET visa office in Warsaw. As they came from Ukraine and got to Warsaw, we provided them help with filling out their form to fill out. We sent Plastvichomniki from Canada to Poland, Austria, Spain, Britain, and Cyprus to assist in their camp leadership. We've purchased Ukrainian books for children that have moved to Poland, and SOS Children's Village Canada will provide for 500 internally displaced children temporary shelter, hygiene kits, primary health care, and food assistance. Here is a picture of the IDPs and the refugees in Europe. We helped the people that crossed the line into Moldova, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. Not only did we treat people with no challenges, we also handled the deaf community We paid for translators to be able to talk to them as they walked across the line. Okay, almost done. Winter's coming. We've announced a $5 million winterization program. And one of the things you see here is the stoves that one of our partners is building. We have ordered 200 of those stoves, and they will be distributed throughout northern and eastern Oblasti through an organization that knows which villages are in greater need, so we can give them some warmth over the winter. We're going to get into blankets. We're going to get into thermal sleeping bags as well. And Help Age Canada will go into 23 villages in Ukraine, and working with the local NGOs, we're going to feed 2,300 seniors. We're going to do minor repairs on their homes, and we'll provide them with psychotherapy if required. And the last big item that we're struggling with right now is generators. What kind of generators does Ukraine really need? And we've asked for a needs assessment, and we'll go out and we'll buy generators. So thank you for listening to our story. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. So I'm sure you'll agree that it's an incredibly overwhelming amount of work. I want to thank Victor, Oksana, Olesia, and Anna, who have been leading that committee. I want to thank all the 30 volunteer directors on the board of directors at the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. I want to thank every single one of you who has volunteered, who has run a fundraiser, who has recommended this appeal to your friends. I thank the UCC for your support across this country, provincial, local, national especially. Thank you. And to our hardworking staff, it's a small but mighty team out of the office in Toronto. They've just been incredible, and we are growing our staff. We're hiring and we're building out the office, and we need to take another silver lining of this cloud and build on our capabilities to continue to be able to continue to help Ukraine moving forward. So more than $20 million of aid has already been deployed. The need will evolve. It will go from emergency aid in the first 6-8 months in this winterization to more chronic projects. The surgical mission is an example of that. I had the privilege of joining that team of volunteer healthcare professionals and was able to see the good that they do firsthand. The impact that they make on the lives of those patients and their families is lasting. We'll evolve to longer-term rebuilding projects too. So this is not over by a long shot. We will need your continued support. After Ukraine wins, for us to continue to deliver on our mission, we need you to continue to encourage donations, to recommend CUF to colleagues, neighbors, friends. If someone's looking for a way to support Ukraine, point them to our website. So many good stories of the work that's been done exist on that website. Thank you so much for your attention. Slava Ukraini!
Дуже дякую, Вікторе і Оресте. Чи є якісь запити до Віктора і Ореста щодо програми Canada-Ukraine Foundation? Прошу.
Мене звати Сергій Жизномірський, і я treasurer UCC Nova Scotia. So my question to you would be, my understanding is that while I appreciate all the great work and fantastic projects and initiatives that have been advanced by the foundation, as a professional accountant myself, the question of accountability for the donated funds, what's the governance structure of the foundation? When we try to, rally the Nova Scotian population to donate, they ask these questions, and I have no response to that. They want to know how much goes directly to Ukraine and how much is spent on overheads. And as much as I would like to believe that, that it's very little, they won't believe me, and they choose to go somewhere else. And I would like them to just direct them to donate to the foundation, and know because of the great work that the foundation does. Is it time to become a bit more, publicly accountable or donor accountable? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Дякую.
Дякую.
Наступне питання.
Це не є питання, але це є перше всі подяки. Thank you to the Saskatchewan Ukrainian Foundation on behalf of the Ukrainian Canadian Provincial Council, Saskatchewan Provincial Council of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. We had a 12-hour radiothon, just like the community of Surrey did, and within the province, we raised $1.1 million.
Чи є якісь ще запити або зауваги?
Так, я маю питання.
Прошу.
Many of the people in this
Але ви
room...
мусите представитися перше.
О, Іван Москалик, Уно.
Дякую.
Many of the people in the room here are very committed to the Ukrainian cause. CUF has done a great deal of good work, and I'm sure it's all in the financial statements, but it might be nice if we could be given a rough number of how much money has been taken in since the onset of the war in February, and of that sum, rough numbers again, how much has been distributed.
То було, але я все ж таки дам, щоб вони відповіли. Ще якісь є запити або зауваги?
Я називаюся Іван Бейкер, я з Торонто. So I just wanted to really just say thank you for all the work that you've done. I think we all know, ми всі переживаємо. We all see the suffering in Ukraine and of the refugees who are leaving Ukraine, and I think we should be incredibly proud that we have an organization in our community, led by volunteers in our community, who have raised, I think $45 million is the number I saw on the screen, who have distributed this aid in such an effective way, and in a way that is far more efficient than any other humanitarian organization that I know of, helping the people of Ukraine right now as they suffer from this war. So you have my thanks, and maybe my plea to all of us here is that we heed the last message on the screen, which was to please donate. So I think we can be all proud of it as a community for all the money that we've contributed to the Canada-Ukraine Foundation. We should be incredibly proud of their work. But I think as one of those last slides shows, there's so much more that's going to need to be done, whether it's mental health, whether it's medical care, whether it's humanitarian, whatever the case may be. So let's redouble our efforts and donate even more, and we'll have even more to be proud of. Дуже дякую.
Дякую. Наступне питання.
Я Devin Sarayuda Goldie as the Cook Victoria. The films that were shown during the presentation were absolutely phenomenal, and I'm wondering if those films may be made available to Cook branches so they can be used to leverage further donations and to show what's been done to those in our communities who have already donated.
Щиро дякую. Чи ще є якісь запити або зауваги? Не бачу. Щиро дякую. Прошу, Орест Віктор.
So I think in the interest of time, it's probably best to tackle most of these questions tomorrow during the workshop, because that's a level of detail that will be covered. more about the governance, more about the accountability, more about how the process works and who approves which spends and so on and so forth. But I will speak to that, and I just want to thank everyone for your questions and your comments and for being so engaged and supportive. I myself have probably spent an average of 25 to 30 hours a week on this. There were some weeks when it was 75 or 80 hours, and some weeks where things eased off a little bit. And I think that the same can be said for most of our board of directors. And again, this is a volunteer role. We have a paid staff that supports the administrative part of it. Most of my efforts have been articulating how the foundation works, how it's governed, how we take in funds, and how those funds are deployed. Victor and his team on the committee have done an admirable job, thousands and thousands of hours overseeing the evaluation of potential projects and deploying those funds. So you saw 45 million gathered and 22 million deployed. That answers that question. That slide was up. It was pretty obvious. One of the FAQs, one of the most frequently asked questions from major donors, and these include multinational corporations, cross-Canadian corporations, law firms, community organizations, major donors. Martha Rogers, you saw a matching donation program between Independence Day and Ukrainian Canadian Heritage Day about a month and a half ago. All of these donors understand what it takes to move this kind of aid. And all of them understand how lean this organization truly has been. 3 to 5% overhead costs. Now that's not sustainable, folks, with the last slide I showed you. Some of these large multi-billion multinational organizations have operation expenses in the areas of 20, 30, 40%. We will never get that high, as Victor said. He's going to keep squeezing the lemons, squeezing as much juice as he can out of the lemon. But we owe it to this community, we owe it to the people of Ukraine, those who are on the receiving end of the humanitarian aid, to build up our capacity. And when I joined this organization 3 years ago as the volunteer president of a volunteer board, we undertook a strategic planning, which is what you should do when you get a new team, a new leadership team in place. And the priorities were to build out the office and to do capacity building fundraising so that we could take on more work. And we started to do some of that, and thank goodness we started to hire some staff before February 24th. We had some people in place already, but a lot of that work has been accelerated through this pandemic. And that work will continue to proceed, and we will continue to report to you, the community, and we thank you so much. I'm not sure if I missed any other questions. I think the last video in particular was created to be 60 seconds long so that it can be used as a commercial, and you'll see these videos emerging in our social media channels following this Triennial Congress. Thank you.
Я щиро дякую Вікторові і Оресту. І завтра, я думаю, що додаткові під час вашого окремої сесії Canada Ukraine Foundation, додаткові такі більш технічні питання, адміністративні питання будете могли почути, а відтак в писемних звітах ви будете могли переглянути, перечитати, і, я думаю, дістати ще додаткові відповіді до тих питань, які були порушені сьогодні.